I'm about to do something kind of wild for myself. I'm about to have an online consultation, an online initial consultation with my tattoo artist. And at some point in the next week or two, I'm gonna go and get indelibly marked. And I'm really excited about it. I'm really, really excited. So if you would like to watch a little bit of me talking on my computer, that's about to happen. To get my own unique piece of art permanently placed on my body, made for me, located on me. There's something really, really exciting about that to me. There's something really exciting about that. This Saturday, totally getting inked. I don't think I'm cool enough to say getting inked, but I'm gonna go with it. Hi. I have crazy hair. It's like summer hair. Like it got wet, it got dry, and it's all good now. I want to do a quick check-in because because of the Sealey challenge, I've been doing a whole lot of reading. So I just want to do a quick check-in. Yeah, let's hope it's a quick check-in. I think what I want to do, because I haven't been making a video for every book of poetry I read. So what I have decided to do instead is to share one of my favorite poems as I do this wrap up. So the first set of poems that I read was Joy Harjo's Weaving Sundown in a Scarlet Light, 50 poems for 50 years. And I am going to read a poem titled Fall Song. It is from page 62 of this collection. Fall Song. It is a dark fall day. The earth is slightly damp with rain. I hear a jay. The cry is blue. I have found you in the story again. Is there another word for divine? I need a song that will keep sky open in my mind. If I think behind me, I might break. If I think forward, I lose now. Forever will be a day like this, strung perfectly on the necklace of days, slightly overcast, yellow leaves, your jacket hanging in the hallway next to mine. The second collection I read was The End of Pink. This is by Catherine Nuremberger, who is the author of my favorite essay collection, The Witch of I. I did not love this poetry collection. I did not love it. And in fact, I am not going to read a poem from it. This was fine. I gave it 4 stars. It did not speak to my heart. So not every collection of poetry will. And then the next set I read was Instructions for Traveling West, poems by Joy Sullivan. I have never read Joy Sullivan before this, and I really loved this collection. Really loved it. As well, you can see those all represent poems that I considered sharing on Instagram, but I did not. I think I only shared 2, and I don't remember which 2. I'm going to read the first poem, which is called Instructions for Traveling West. From this collection, I'm actually going to read 2 poems. One is very short, though, so don't worry about it. Instructions for Traveling West. First, you must realize you are homesick for all the lives you are not living. And then you must commit to the road and the rising loneliness, to the sincere thrill of coming apart. Divorce yourself from routine and control. Instead, find a desert and fall in. Take the trail that promises a view, get lost, break your toes, bruise your knees. Keep going. Watch a purple meadow quiver. Get still. Pet trail dogs. Buy the hat. Run out of gas. Befriend strangers. Knight yourself every morning for your newborn courage. Give grief her own lullaby. Drink whiskey beside a 100-year-old cactus. Honor everything. Pray to something unnameable. Fall for someone impractical. Reacquaint yourself with desire and all her slender hands. Bear beauty for as long as you are able, and if you spot a sunning warbler glowing like a prism, remind yourself joy is not a trick. And then I'm going to read Tomatoes. This is from page 130 of this collection. I waited so long for love, and suddenly here it is, standing in the garden, hands full of heirlooms hot from the sun. Soon we'll make a supper of them, salted slabs between slices of bread. Your beard silvers, my hips ripen, the mail piles up. Phone calls go unanswered. Forgive us, our mouths are full of tomatoes. We are so busy being small and hungry and alive. I really loved that collection. The next collection I finished was 3 Chinese Poets. I have read this so many times and I really love it, but also I'm not going to share from that collection today. I then finished What Kind of Woman by Kate Baer, and I really liked what I liked, and I really didn't like what I didn't like in this collection. I'm going to share a very short poem. This is called Interview with Self. This is page 69 of this particular collection. Interview with Self. Can I have it all? No. Can I have it all? No. Can I have it all? No. Then I finished Brand New Ancients, and in a recent tag video, I read a part of this one, and so I'm not going to read any more from this one, but this is very well worth your time. It is one single poem, and it is glorious. I read this. I show you the spine so you know how large this is, because I actually read this over the course of 3 days. So I finished one short collection and read parts of this over the course of several days to finish it in a timely manner. I can't read all of that in one day. It was hard to read it that fast anyway, because Robert Haas is one of my favorite poets, and Robert Haas needs to be savored. A slow savor. And I could not do that. There are 2 poems that I want to read from here. One is one of my favorite poems of all time. This is Meditations at Lagunitas. All the new thinking is about loss. In this, it resembles all the old thinking. The idea, for example, that each particular erases the luminous clarity of a general idea. That the clown-faced woodpecker probing the dead sculpted trunk of that black birch is, by his presence, some tragic falling off from the first world of undivided light. Or the other notion that, because there is in this world no one thing to which the brambles of blackberry corresponds, a word is elegy to what it signifies. We talked about it late last night, and in the voice of my friend there was a thin wire of grief, a tone almost querulous. After a while, I understood that talking this way, everything dissolves. Justice, pine, hair, woman, you, and I. There was a woman I made love to, and I remembered how, holding her small shoulders in my hands, sometimes I felt a violent wonder at her presence, like a thirst for salt. For my childhood river with its island willows, silly music from the pleasure boat, muddy places where we caught the little orange silverfish called pumpkin seed. It hardly had to do with her. Longing, we say, because desire is full of endless distances. I must have been the same to her, but I remember so much. The way her hands dismantled bread, the thing her father said that hurt her, what she dreamed. There are moments when the body is as numinous as words. Days that are the good flesh continuing. Such tenderness those afternoons and evenings, saying, blackberry, blackberry, blackberry. I've written several papers on this poem, and I absolutely love it. I strongly recommend that you take a moment and sit with it if that is something you are interested in. Actually, I think I'm going to read 3 from this selection. It's very big. I can read 3, right? I'm going to read The Problem of Describing Trees from page 274. The previous one was page 79. This one is page 274 in this collection right here. The Problem of Discerning Trees. The aspen glitters in the wind, and that delights us. The leaf flutters, turning, because that motion in the heat of August protects its cells from drying out. Likewise, the leaf of the cottonwood. The gene pool threw up a wobbly stem, and the tree danced. No, the tree capitalized. No, there are limits to saying in language what the tree did. It is good sometimes for poetry to disenchant us. Dance with me, dancer. Oh, I will. Mountains, sky, the aspen, doing something in the wind. And then the last one I will read to you is To a Reader. I've watched memory wound you. I felt nothing but envy. Having slept in wet meadows, I was not through desiring. Imagine January and the beach, a bleached sky, gulls, and look seaward. What is not there is there, isn't it? the huge bird of the first light, arched above first waters, beyond our touching or intention, or the reasonable shore. And that's page 94. Love this collection. Love it. And then today, I finished The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur. And this was a reread for me, and I did find quite a lot that I liked. But again, once again, what I didn't like, I really didn't like, and what I did like, I really liked. I have a hard time sometimes calling this poetry. This is a kind of poetry that has come out of Instagram, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I more than half the time feel like, yes, absolutely, this is legitimate poetry. And the other part of me, or the other part of time, I'm like, it's just a sentence. but it is what it is, and you do get something out of it. I do get something out of it. A lot of it for me in this particular collection is a very grief-focused, but very personal grief-focused, her grief-focused. And it doesn't, in my opinion, let the reader in. It's too personal, in my opinion. You can disagree with me, but it's too personal to be universal, and that is part of why I wonder sometimes if it's poetry. But it's fine. It is what it is. It's absolutely fine. It's a great little collection. So I'm going to read you several because they are very short. So the first one that I will read is page 41 from this collection. And it says, "You're everywhere except right here, and it hurts." The next one is page 97. "When the world comes crashing at your feet, it's okay to let others help pick up the pieces. If we're present to take part in your happiness when your circumstances are great, we are more than capable of sharing your pain." The next one is on page 103. "The way you speak of yourself, the way you degrade yourself into smallness, is abuse." The next page is 108. "If I am the longest relationship of my life, isn't it time to nurture intimacy and love with the person I lie in bed with each night?" And there are several more here that I will not read, but I will end on this one. It's a bit longer. This is page 178, Long Distance. "If I had to walk to get to you, it would take 826 hours. On bad days, I think about it. What I might do if the apocalypse comes and the planes stop flying. There is so much time to think, so much empty space wanting to be consumed, but no intimacy around to consume it. It feels like being stuck at a train station, waiting and waiting and waiting for the one with your name on it. When the moon rises on this coast, but the sun still burns shamelessly on yours, I crumble knowing even our skies are different. We have been together so long, but have we really been together if your touch has not held me long enough to imprint itself on my skin? I try my hardest to stay present, but without you here, everything at its best is only mediocre." And that is where I currently am, 1 week into the Sealey challenge. It's going very well. Additionally, today I finished Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, the first book in the Last Hours trilogy from the Shadowhunter world. I now know what all those things mean. When I started this, I had never read a Cassandra Clare. I didn't know what I was getting to. I didn't know where this was going. And I can happily say that I really, really loved this. Reading this got 5 points for the black team in DeckofTBRathon, because this was, I can't remember what the card was, but this fulfilled the on the cover prompt, or the in the title prompt, and I picked a color, and gold is a color. And so yeah, it was 5 points, and it was also, in my opinion, 5 stars. This is the story of a bunch of teen, young adult, like maybe between the ages of like 18 and 23, and their parents as well, but mostly the youngest generation, or the younger generation, They've arrived in London. It's the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. And they have their own society within London society. They are not part of London society, or the mundanes, as they call them, the humans. They are demon hunters. Some of them are demons. Some of them are ghosts. Some of them are warlocks, which has a very interesting, there's female warlocks. So my understanding of the word warlock was that it was a male witch, but no, that's not what it is in here. There are political things going on, and romantic things going on, and family things going on, and friendship things going on, and it's a complicated world, probably less complicated if I had read all the books that came before it, to be fair. But as it is, it was very easy to catch up. She gives enough background that you can actually start here and know what's going on pretty quickly. There were some really intriguing characters, and it ends on a cliffhanger that caused me to already purchase the second and third books in the trilogy, which I will definitely be reading fairly quickly. It's a very, it's not a substantial read. It's like candy, right? It's like French fries. It's like French fries. It fills you up. It takes up the space. It gives your mouth something to do. But it's not entirely satisfying, and it does kind of make you crave something a little bit more substantial. I do enjoy it quite a lot, though. So I will be finishing this, and yeah, this was really fun. I found a deck of cards that I forgot I had. I have this cute little Jane Austen playing cards deck. It actually comes with instructions for how to play several games from the Regency period with cards, which is super fun. And the deck is really tiny. I don't have a regular deck to show you, but I would say it's probably a third the size of a regular deck. And I am going to choose another card, and that will determine what book replaces this one. I want to have 3 books going all at the same time. I am also, probably tomorrow, I will finish The Story of a New Name. And I'm not very far into, can't even remember what it's called right now, but the horror one. I'm not very far into that one at all, but it's weird. So it's very strange. I will have a lot to say about that one. Unlike this one, which I feel like if I say too much, it will ruin the experience. With that horror book, I have so much to unpack. Hi, Lola. I have so much to unpack with that horror book, so I will have a lot to say. But right now, let's take a break and find out what book I'm going to read, or what book I'm going to add to my pile next. Okay, so as you saw, I got the 4 of Hearts. Doesn't matter what the suit is, though, just that it's a 4. And 4 is a long book. So there are various amounts of points you can get for different lengths of book. And I have gone with quite a long book. So I'm choosing a 5-pointer. Once again, everything so far has been a 5-pointer. Yay me. I have chosen to add Philippa Gregory's The Favored Child onto this list. This is the second book in the Wide Acre trilogy. I read the first book in the Wide Acre trilogy, which is called Wide Acre, last year, the end of last year, around this time last year. Maybe it was October or November of last year. It felt like a very fall kind of book, and I really enjoyed it. It's super, super messed up. It's about kind of like a Scarlett O'Hara woman during the 16 and 1700s in England, and she's very ambitious, but she's a woman, so there's a lot of strict boundaries on what she's allowed to accomplish, what she's allowed to do, and how she's allowed to do it. And she manipulates men in order to achieve what she desires, which is to own Wideacre. Like, she feels a very visceral connection to her family's land, and it's something that she's losing because she's a woman. She can't inherit it at this time. So she actually does some pretty crazy things. She does some pretty crazy things. Scarlett O'Hara has nothing on this woman. She does some pretty crazy things. And this results in some children with her brother. And it's all in an effort to make sure that somehow she can inherit the land. So she has a son, which does kind of mean that she gets to inherit the land because he will inherit the land. And this book, I say that only because this book picks up with the children. So I will be getting to know different characters, for which I will be quite glad, because this woman has gotten, by the end of the first book, she's gotten like wildly unacceptable. Like, you're kind of in it. Like, you want to know what happens. You're not, I feel sorry for her. I feel empathy for her. And at the same time, she's disgusting. So she's the most likable, unlikable character I think I've ever met. And I want to know how her kids are doing, how her children are doing. So I added this, and this is a solid 614 pages with pretty small print. It's going to take a little bit of time, I'm sure, but it is these read very quickly. If you've ever read Philippa Gregory, you'll know they're usually pretty chunky, but they read pretty fast. And I am also, as I said, still reading, but we'll probably finish tomorrow, The Story of a New Name. I'm really enjoying this. I keep trying to figure out, like, how am I going to explain how I feel about this writing and why I'm so into it. I can't quite put my finger on that right now, but I'm into it. I love it, and I will finish it tomorrow. And then the other one is Lost in the Garden. I couldn't remember. I'm only 11 pages in, and it's so weird. And I'm going to have so much to unpack about this book. So there we go. Oh, one last thing. On Instagram, I have been writing a poem a day, and I've been sharing that poem a day on Instagram. And I thought I would share one or two of them here. I have quite a few so far, but I will, let's see. I'm going to share one or two. I'm going to share In Pompeii because it's short. And there's no rhyme or reason to these poems. Whatever inspires me on that day, I write. I'm not trying to make like a cohesive anything, just trying to write a poem a day. And every day they look fairly different. So this is from the third. So this would be the third poem that I wrote this month. In Pompeii, tucked between the hand-hewn cobblestones that pave the Roman roads are small white pebbles, meant to reflect the moonlight and guide travelers safely through the dark. Now, I am busy making piles of white pebbles outside my door in the hope they'll blaze like beacons and guide you home. And then this one is untitled. I wrote this on the 5th day. Untitled. Consider the effort it requires a sprout to push its way out of the security of the seed, all it's ever known, its precious little home, to be met by darkness and density of soil. Think of the courage to keep swimming upward toward what is sensed but not seen, never known or yet experienced, could not even be named if it had a tongue. The strength such a fragile, slim, green stem must find to push its way toward a promise, a misty knowing barely whispered. This is what you were meant for. This is what is meant for you. What you were made for, exist for, your yearning, your fulfillment. Reach for it, move towards it, trust in this. Yes, I know you have nothing but a feeling to go on. Go on it. Grow on it. Reach, reach, reach through the heavy, suffocating, dark uncertainty. And it does. And then I'll read one last one. This is from yesterday, not today. I won't read today's. If you'd like to see the rest of them, or if you'd like to see any of these, or lots of the poems that I just read to you from the collections, I've posted them in Instagram each day. So they're there for you. And this is the last one that I'll read here for this video. Also untitled, from the 6th. I woke up early to watch the sunrise. It was a whim, a craving. I'm trying to honor those gentle desires after years of choosing practicality and form. I'm acting on the irrational requests of my heart. My world feels wide open. These seemingly small moments of yes and are changing everything about me. Decide that anything is possible and everything becomes possible. It's really confusing the dog. This morning, as I clicked on her leash, her eyes said, "This is not how we do things." As I led her into the space between night and glowing dawn, she wondered if I was okay with a lean on my leg. She is a habitual creature bent on comfort. But when I halted our steps to breathe in the pink, cold beauty of the skyline, she stopped and stared. I did not pull out my phone to inadequately capture this beauty. This morning, it was just and all for me. The dog won't tell. It's been a month of poetry so far, and I'm absolutely loving it. And I will check in with you later. Hi, I think you're like really off balance, but I'm just gonna go with it because I want to do this quickly. Finished a couple more poetry books and a DeckofTBRathon book. It's very early on Sunday morning and I have plans today, so I wanted to get this recorded before I go out. Poetry wise, it's been 2 days since I checked in. So I finished B by Sarah K, which is a very popular, and has been for a while, a very popular spoken word poem that was featured on TED, like, I don't know, in 2013, 2012 maybe. And so this was a fun reread. And then I also read Where the Sidewalk Ends, which is a super fun read always. I will go ahead and read a poem to you. If you don't know Shel Silverstein, you really need to get your hands on him. I shared on Instagram my favorite poem from this collection, which is Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout Would Not Take the Garbage Out, which I love and have had memorized for a long time. But for checking in here, I am going to read my next favorite poem. And this one ranks, Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout does not rank among my favorite poems of poemness of the poem pantheon, but this one does. This one does. So I really love this poem. This is The Bagpipe Who Didn't Say No. I'll show you the pictures. Okay. It was 9 o'clock at midnight, at 3:15, when a turtle met a bagpipe on the shoreside by the sea. And the turtle said, "My dearie, may I sit with you? I'm weary." And the bagpipe didn't say no. Said the turtle to the bagpipe, "I have walked this lonely shore. I have talked to waves and pebbles, but I've never loved before. Will you marry me today, dear? Is it no you're going to say, dear?" But the bagpipe didn't say no. Said the turtle to his darling, "Please excuse me if I stare, but you have the plattest skin, dear, and you have the strangest hair. If I begged you pretty please, love, could I give you just one squeeze, love?" And the bagpipe didn't say no. Said the turtle to the bagpipe, "Ah, you love me then, confess, let me whisper in your dainty ear, and hold you to my chest." And he cuddled her and teased her, and so lovingly he squeezed her, and the bagpipe said, "Auga." Said the turtle to the bagpipe, "Did you honk or bray or neigh? For auga when you're kissed is such a heartless thing to say. Is it that I have offended? Is it that our love has ended?" And the bagpipe didn't say no. Said the turtle to the bagpipe, "Shall I leave you, darling wife? Shall I waddle off to Woden? Shall I crawl out of your life? Shall I move, depart, and go, dear? Oh, I beg you, tell me no, dear." But the bagpipe didn't say no. So the turtle crept off crying, and he ne'er came back no more, and he left the bagpipe lying on that smooth and sandy shore. And some night when tide is low there, just walk up and say, "Hello there," and politely ask the bagpipe if the story's really so. I assure you, darling children, the bagpipe won't say no. Where the Sidewalk Ends. Very worth a read. I also drew a new card. I forgot to film myself, but I promise I drew a 7. And 7 is one that I was hoping to avoid because it is a recommendation one. Like there are 3 different levels of recommendation and obviously 3 different points. I went, because I want to make quick choices. So like I went with one that is of lesser value. This is my first not 5-point card. But I went with one that has been recommended to me. I purchased it ages ago on the recommendation of my friend Hannah, and she is an art teacher. She reads widely. She's about 15 years older than me, I think, and she is a woman of wisdom. And she said that I would like this despite everything that I read about it that tells me I will not like this. So I'm going out on a limb here, and I am reading The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell, and I have begun this, and I'm not liking it, but it's just getting established. It was written in the 1990s, and it is a future. It's placed in the future. It's science fiction that deals with art and spirituality. So far in this book, it's 2025, which is not, is it 2025 or 2050 something? Hang on, 2025 doesn't seem future enough, even for the 90s. It is 2059. So it's 2059, and a group of monks, at least I assume they're monks, are having missions, like going on a mission to other planets. I think Mars. I think it's Mars. And you can see how into this I've been as I've been reading. I am on page like 30 something. I'm on chapter 3. And these are Catholic monks. So Rome is involved. Something happened. One of the missionaries, one of the monks out there, was interacting with a group of beings that live out there that they're trying to convert, I think, to Christianity. I'm not absolutely positive about that, but what else would monks be doing on a mission? Catholic monks be doing on a mission? So they're out in space, they're on a planet, which I think is Mars, and they're trying to establish colonies. They're colonizing is what they're doing, and trying to convert. And something happens out there, and one of these monks gets sent back to Earth, but he's got to face some kind of trial or tribunal, and we don't know what happened, but it's something bad. And it's left him super injured. He's in the hospital. But as soon as he is physically capable, he's going to face some kind of trial. And so it is the unfolding of what happened, why it happened, and I think it is going to have an interesting conversation about morality and faith and social obligation and independence and things like that. But right now I'm not loving it. I think I might love what it does, but not how it does it. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. That is replacing on my stack The Story of a New Name by Elena Ferrante, and translated by, translator has to get a mention here, she's amazing, Anne Goldstein. So this is something that probably all of you already know about. This is the second book in the Neapolitan novels. I did mention it in my last check-in that I was reading it. I just edited that last night and added it to the month-long video. So I know that I mentioned that I didn't quite know how to explain how I feel about this writing, because I think that it is so beautiful and captivating. Her writing, just the craft is so beautiful and captivating. And I need to be able to distinguish between how much of that is translation and comes across as translation and what I'm missing by not reading it in the original Italian, which I can't do. No, not at all. But what am I missing, and how much of what I love is what the author has done, and how much of what I love is what the translator has done. And that's a very interesting puzzle to unravel for me, in my brain. Yeah. So I am trying to figure out what I want to say. And I was trying all last night and I still haven't figured it out. I still don't know what I want to say. But I think what is accurate is that this writing is incredibly blunt. It's not flowery in any way, shape, or form. These are not complex sentences. These are extremely simple sentences used to express extremely complex ideas about human interaction that is rarely articulated but regularly lived. And so there's this weird complexity presented in this extreme simplicity that makes it feel like a punch in the gut. As things are revealed, it just feels like such a constant physical ache. Mm-hmm. Sounds like a great read, right? It is a great read. I highly recommend it. It is such an experience. It's a lot like it's a lot like what it would be to read a soap opera in a lot of ways, except like the things that these girls, these women now experience at the hands of one another and at the hands of society is constant and dramatic. And traumatic. Constant, dramatic, and traumatic. It's just like this constant unveiling of trauma. And not in the way, it's very realistic. Like I say that and then immediately I think of A Little Life, which I refuse to read. I refuse to read A Little Life. And a friend recommended My Dark Vanessa, which I also refuse to read because I just feel like it glorifies trauma. I don't want literature to glorify trauma for me. I don't want it to romanticize trauma and the impact, the negative impact that people can have on each other. I want to read about it because I want to have greater empathy and understanding and expand my experience beyond my experience, but I don't want to read something that makes it romanticized. And I don't think that these books do that. I think that they do write very realistically about trauma and the traumas that occur. Trigger warnings for almost anything you can think of in this book. No, not almost anything you can think of, but there's just a lot of betrayal. There's a lot of abuse that happens. There is a lot of manipulation and cruelty. And it's all very realistic. It's all very possible, probable even. But there's no softness in the delivery. There's no softness in it's almost unemotional. It's almost unemotional. It's not manipulating my emotions in any way. And that makes it more emotional, because that feels like the way a person who has gone through this trauma, who would be the narrator of this book, would be telling you about their trauma. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. And I will continue on with the series. It took me 5 years to pick up this one. I've had them both on my shelf. I had the first two on my shelf for a long time, a couple of years ago, a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Where does time go? I read the first one, My Brilliant Friend, I think it's called. And then now I just read the second one, and we'll see how long it takes me to read the last two. I don't own them yet, but I want to read them. And yeah, I don't think you should avoid it because I use the word trauma like 700 times. It's really great. It's a really, really great slice of life. It's just that slice of life is unemotional and quite painful and beautiful, extremely beautiful. So, The Story of a New Name, finished. And that is my check-in, and I need to go finish getting ready to, to go out. I've got plans all day, so bye. I'm going to shuffle some cards because I have finished The Favored Child by Philippa Gregory. Such a good read. I will probably already have debriefed you on that, but now I'm about to shuffle some cards. So let's see what comes up next. Hey, it is early on Saturday morning, the last Saturday of summer, and we have to do a check-in because what I've read is getting out of control. So, and also I've pulled lots and lots of cards. I just pulled another one this morning. Lots and lots, that's relative. So let's go ahead and go through some of these books that have been read before I head out into the world today. Some fun plans today, which you will never see. But let's go ahead and go through what I have read. So the next book I read for the Sealey Challenge was Emily Dickinson Envelope Poems. I'll read you the one from the back because it is my favorite from inside. As you can see, there's just little bits of envelope with Emily's writing on it, and then transcribed along the side is what it says. And these are basically her thoughts and rough drafts very, very rough drafts. But the back is kind of nice, so I'll read that one. It says, "In this short life that only lasts an hour, how much, how little is within our power." And what's cool about these, I think, is that it shows you the word that she was going for maybe, but then another word that she was considering. So instead of only, she could have wrote merely. And she was very concerned with meter, and so she would have picked whatever fit best with meter. That poem I don't think ever becomes a poem, or that scrap, but if she were to keep working on it, she would have picked what worked best with the meter of that poem. The next book that I read was for the Sealey Challenge as well. This is The Wild Iris by Louise Gluck. I love Louise Gluck's writing. I have loved her for a very long time. This collection was not my favorite. There's a lot about grief in here, and I'm just not in that place right now, which is nice. But there's also a lot about anger towards God, or God's anger towards us, a rift in that relationship. And that is also not where I'm at right now. So I have 3 poems that I enjoyed from this collection, but it wasn't really like, so I recognized the quality of the poems. I liked the sound of the poems, but I wasn't vibing with the poems. So I have 3 that I enjoyed. I'm not going to read them, but I'll tell you that one was The Wild Iris, which is the title to titular poem. To titular, such a fun word. Snowdrops, and she has many of them called matins, which I believe is a call to prayer or an evening prayer. So this is one of the matins. And by saying that it's a call to prayer or an evening prayer, I'm just drawing on the short amount of time that I worked in an Episcopal church, and I think that that is something that they had. Next, I read Kat Tang's The 5-Star Stranger. This was my book of the month pick, and it arrived, and it was so short, and I just was like, I don't care what I'm supposed to be reading, I'm just gonna sit down and read it. In the end, the next card that I pulled when I needed to pull a card was read a genre that you don't usually read, or it was a genre card, and for 5 points you could read one that you don't usually read. This is straight up depressing literary fiction, and I do not usually read that. I can count on one hand the times I will read that in any given year. So I counted it for DeckofTBRathon, even though I read it before I got the card. I got the card and I went, oh, I read that. I just read that like 3 days ago. That works. So I counted it and I picked another card. The 5-Star Stranger by Kat Tang is about this guy who is really broken. Like, he is super, super broken. He's a broken human being, and he is so afraid of any kind of human intimacy, any kind of human interaction, any kind of being known or knowing anyone. He works for a company that hires people out to play roles in people's lives. So the first chapter shows him at a restaurant with a woman, and the woman is trying to make this man jealous. So she hires this guy to actually propose to her within the sight and hearing of the man that she's trying to make jealous. And he does this. He gets paid for it. His longest standing job is father to a 10-year-old girl. So when this girl was 9 years old, her single mother was like, I don't want her to be freaked out about this. I don't want there to be tons of questions about who her father is from other people or from her. I want her to just feel confident in herself. And so she hires this guy to pretend like he's a long-haul trucker, so he's only home once a week. And so he comes once a week for 9 years and is this girl's father once a week for 9 years. The school recognizes him. He's an emergency contact. The girl believes that he's her father. At first, the man and the woman pretend like they have just a beautiful, wonderful marriage, and as time goes by, things get messy. They get more complicated. As the girl grows up, she asks more questions. Boundaries start to get fuzzy, and this means that she is more present and more active in his life, which means that she accidentally sees and hears and encounters things that make her ask questions. Things about his career, things about who he is, things about where he goes when he's not home. The mother kind of wants more from him, like wants an actual relationship. Not necessarily because she's attracted to him, but because he's a fixture, right? He's a fixture, and nothing ever changes. Like nothing ever goes beyond the surface between the two of them in reality. Although they kind of share a child, and things then get even more messy when his just normal human emotions and care for this little girl, start to open him up to kind of wanting more interactions with more people, and he becomes friends with a different client, and that's a very bad thing. The different client starts to threaten to tell the little girl, because she thinks it's really screwed up, which it is. She starts to think that she should tell the little girl that her father is actually a hired man. And everything falls apart from there. And I enjoyed the premise of this. I wish it was a comedy. It's not. It's not. I would read more by this author. I read this in 1.5 sittings. Like I sat down and started reading it the day it arrived, and then I put it down, and the next day I just read the whole thing. And I would read other things by this author. I really enjoyed their writing, but this story really was quite the bummer. It was really sad. So I rated it, I think I rated it 4 stars where I rate things, because it is a really well done book, but at the same time, it made me very sad. Not in a good way. Not in a good way. The next thing I read was for the Sealey Challenge, The End We Start From. This is not traditionally a poem, but it's also definitely not traditionally prose. So it's written in all of these like little short bursts of information. It is heavily reliant upon symbol and imagery. You have to piece together what's going on. There is no narration that tells you what's going on. And it is about the end of the world, a flood, a woman has just had a baby. So this is about motherhood, and it's about society crumbling, and it's about your identity crumbling and being rebuilt into something else when you become a mother. Like, who do you have to become in order to be a mother? And protect your child in a crumbling world. And it's harrowing, and the end is very hopeful. I won't read you anything from this. I did count this as a poem. I did read this in about an hour. And I do feel like it is incredibly lyrical and poetic, much more so than it is prose or prosaic. And I think that it's excellent. I do realize that this has been made into a movie, and I don't know how that would work, and I don't want to watch it, because I don't think filling in all the holes like that to make it visually complete will do anything to enhance this story. Like, making it into a movie is a huge mistake. I read Anne Carson's The Autobiography of Red. This is trying to be like an epic poem. And you know I love epic poems. You know I love Kay Tempest's Brand New Ancients. It's doing something very similar to that, except it's about one particular boy who has a very one particular monster. It was a very, very hard life, and I hated this. I hated it. I will not be keeping this. I will not be recommending this. I will not be rereading this. I hated this. I won't be reading from it either. But it did count for the Sealey Challenge. So after I read that, I needed the next day to read something that would revive me. And so I went back to an old favorite, Kay Tempest. I know it says Kate, but they have gone through their own changes and are now non-binary. have gone through their own acceptance of themselves. And they go by K now, K-A-E. And this is one of their older collections of poems. This is Running Upon the Wires. This one is all about a breakup and the aftermath of a breakup and the process of getting through that and coming out the other side and meeting someone new. And I do like some of the poems in here, and some of them I don't relate to very much. There's a lot of anger and a lot of self-hatred in some of these poems. And maybe at some point I might have related to those things, but not right now. One that I really enjoy, have always enjoyed, is called Gratitude. I'll read that one for you. It's quite short. Gratitude. I have seen us sat together in the evening, not saying much, listening to the fire, or laid out on a camping mat, your fingertips pulling at strands of my hair or dancing, to flamenco in the living room. Well, you dancing, me awestruck, clutching your hips, your name like a bird trying to burst out of my throat. One more. It's the one right next to it. Love. The way you hold your cup in a closed fist, your wrists that get rheumatic in the rain, your long feet, long legs, and bony shoulders, your smile a crash of teeth from nose to chin, your eyes drop 3 octaves when you want me. Your body is transposed into the key of sand dunes, raw quartz, heat from a slow sun, suddenly as graceful as when you dance, no longer smashing your limbs into unmoving tabletops or burning your hands on every available hot surface or headbutting the car door when you dive in. You know, it used to keep me up at night, the lack of you. I love Kate Tempest. Favorite living poet. Then I finished for DeckofTBRathon for the prompt of long book, or I don't know what it is, book length, I guess. And I picked the 5.1, the long book, because I wanted the 5 points, but also because I really wanted to read this book. And this did not disappoint. This is the second book in the Wide Acre trilogy. The first book deals with Beatrice, who is the daughter of a landowner in Civil War era England, and as such has no claim to the land, none. But she has this special connection with the land. She has some clairvoyant type of gifts that are directly related to the land. Anything to do with the land, she can see it, she can make it grow, she can protect it, she can do all these things because she has this uber connection to the land, and she's totally obsessed with it and wanting to own it and cultivate it and care for it and make it a place where the people on it can thrive. She's not allowed to inherit it when her father dies. It goes to her brother. So she resorts to some very sketch things, including having her brother's children, in order to try and secure a line for herself to inherit the land or have say over the land or be able to stay on the land. And the offspring of manipulating and controlling her brother are the focus of this book. And among the people in the village attached to the land, White Acre, there is a legend that of the two possible younger generation that might take over the land in some way, maybe she'll get married and her husband and her will take over the land, or maybe Beatrice's son will take over the land. There's questions about what will happen and who the line gives the land to. But they believe that of the two of them, one of them is the favored child, the one that inherited Beatrice's gift with the land, the one that will bring the land back to life, because in the years since Beatrice's death, it has completely fallen apart. It cannot support the people. It cannot make any money. This happened in Beatrice's lifetime too, but it's gotten worse since her death. So there is a fairy tale that one of these two individuals, these two teenagers, is the favored child? Which one is it? That's the one that they want the land to go to, because that will be the one that brings the land back to life and brings them back to life. It is very clear that Richard and... do we never know her name? She might always be I. We might not actually know her name. I feel like we did. Julia. Because I was like, I feel like I knew her name. So there's Richard and there's Julia, and it's very, very clear from the very beginning that Julia is the one with all of Beatrice's gifts. In fact, Julia sometimes is possessed, not in a scary way, but sometimes is possessed by Beatrice. She has memories in which she is Beatrice, living things that we know as the readers of the first book happened to Beatrice. So she is definitely the favored child. However, to be favored in this family is not a good thing. It's just not a good thing. Richard is the one in this that ends up doing some very, very terrible things. Now, these two are both Beatrice's children, but when Julia was born, she was the firstborn of Beatrice and her brother, and she wasn't, spoilers here, she wasn't a boy, so she didn't accomplish Beatrice's goal. And so she gave her to Richard's wife to raise as her own, because Richard's wife was unable to have children. And so Julia, Beatrice's daughter, thinks that Beatrice was her aunt. And Richard, the next child and the last child Beatrice has, believes that they are cousins. And Richard and Julia kind of fall in love when they're young. Richard is a very, very broken human being. He's a very messed up individual. He does really awful, harmful, abusive things. You think things are going to go so well for Julia at many points in this book. Richard will have none of that. This is a rough book to read, but so well written, so engaging, so engrossing, in a way so believable. It's dealing very much with the lack of autonomy that a woman had, and how it's making correlations between females at that time of any rank being somehow indebted or in servitude to the men in their lives. Yeah, this is just a really well-written historical fiction that was totally engaging, totally engrossing, and also hard to read, but loved it so much. Definitely will be moving on, maybe before this year is over, into the final book, which is Meriden. Very much looking forward to that. I then picked another card that required me to read a genre that I don't normally read. So I took the opportunity to restart and finish The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Torton. This is the author of 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle and the one about the ship, the historical fiction, The Devil and the Dark Water, I think is what it's called. And this is totally different from those two, but also really Stuart Torton-esque. Like he has a voice that is very recognizable, but the way that he tells his stories and the content of his stories and the way that things are rolled out, they're all very, very unique to each other. And in a letter at the back of the book, he actually addresses that in a really nice and fun way. And he writes this letter to the reader about how important the reader is to his process and what his goal was when he sat down to start writing books. And then in the end, he gives this little PS, which is so enticing. He says, PS, next time we're doing a more contemporary thriller thing, it's going to be wild. Hopefully I'll see you there. So that sounds super fun. I'm very much looking forward to that. I think I will read anything this man puts out, even though it takes me a while every single time. I started this in May. Read the first 8 chapters, loved the first 8 chapters, and then got distracted by other things and just didn't pick it back up until I got that card. And then I sat down and I was like, okay, this is a dystopian mystery science fiction end of the world book, and I don't read end of the world books very often, although I have just shared a different end of the world book, so maybe that makes me look like a liar, but I truly don't read end of the world books very often. And so this really does count. This is not the kind of thing that I normally reach for. I only reach for it when Stuart Turton is the one writing it. This, I can't tell you anything about it because, like with all of his books, it is best to go in completely ignorant of what is going down and let him take you through the twists and turns himself and let him unfold the story in his own way. There are a couple of quotes, though, that I can read to you completely out of context. So one of them says, "She has 14 of these notepads stored under her bed, every page stuffed with questions she's never received answers to. She's been writing them down for as long as she can remember. A few have been crossed out because she's worked them out herself, but the list grows every day. It's a litany of ignorance. You know everything you need to know to be happy, I say, repeating a phrase that has become a mantra between us. But I'm not happy, she points out. You're dissatisfied, I argue. You have no idea what unhappiness is. I'm hoping you never do. You have everything inside you to be happy, but I'm not happy. And then, you should tell her how you feel, I say. Clara ignores me as she always does. It's a shame, because if she'd just find a little courage, she could be happy with we. I don't even need to model the future to see it. Love is simply a matter of what people need and what they lack. It's two broken things fitting together for a time. Unfortunately, she's clammed up and probably won't get another chance. By tomorrow morning, we will likely be dead, and Clara will spend the rest of her life tormented by the things she never said and what might have happened if she had. It's two broken things fitting together for a time. One more? Okay, one more. You were unkind to Emery earlier, I say. I know, he admits, having calmed down. She just makes me so angry. It's been the same ever since she was a girl, asking questions nobody can answer. She knows it does no good, but she keeps poking. Why does it annoy you so much? Because, he lets his voice trail off, thinking about it deeply for the first time. Because they are always good questions. The murder at the end of the world. Then I reread Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I love Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, especially in this Simon Armitage. There are workers outside, and she's telling me that she's concerned. But this is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I love it, especially in the Simon Armitage translation. In this one, you can see that on the one hand, there is the original Old English, and he him raised reckonly and rod over the brig. There segs hymns said by Sadel Kel he light. And that's what I love? No. And then on the other side, there is the modern English translation by Simon Armitage. What I just said was, and bidding them to rise, he rode across the bridge. He was assisted from the saddle by several men. There is one part that I will read out to you just to give you a taste of what, oh, where is it? There's one part I will read out to you just to give you a taste of the feel of the poetry, because it is so genuinely like sink intoable. It's so satisfying, this translation. It says, that morning he moves on, skirts the mountainside, descends a deep forest densely overgrown with vaulting hills, to each half of the valley and ancient oaks and huddles of hundreds. Hazel and hawthorn are interwoven, decked and draped in damp, shaggy moss, and bedraggled birds on bare black branches pipe pitifully into the piercing cold. Not only is it atmospheric, but it's so satisfying. It's just so satisfying. It's like soothing my little brain. I like it so much. I love this. Don't watch the movie. The movie was terrible. The movie, it was so bad. Read the book. Listen to the book. You can get it on audio and give it a listen. Go for the Simon Armitage, though. It's very, very good. And then finally, yesterday I read Bluets by Maggie Nelson. And quite honestly, I don't think I'm smart enough to understand this book. It just went whoosh right over my head. The whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, well, that's an interesting thing. That's an interesting connection. Okay, you like blue. Okay, you're grieving a breakup. You're really angry about a breakup with a man with blue eyes. Lots of history about blue art, blue painting, blue, the hue of blue. And it just goes on and on and on. And I just don't think I got it. I just don't. A couple of things that stood out. I literally only have 2 tabs, and it's such a lot of things. It's 240 poems or snips. I will read the last thing, the 240th one. It says, "All right then, let me try to rephrase. When I was alive, I aimed to be a student, not of longing, but of light." I liked that. I don't know how it fits with the rest of the book. It's obviously a culminating phrase. It's obviously impactful and important. I honestly think this book was smarter than I am. So I would like to go back and read it again someday, but I don't know if I will ever want to. So I'm going to keep it on my shelf, and then maybe someday I'll forget how inadequate it made me feel while reading it, and I'll bravely pull it back off the shelf and say, hey, what was this about again? But I think it'll take a lot of years. I pulled a card after I finished reading The Last Murder at the End of the World. And that card was another 4, which is a long book, or the length of the book. And so I picked a long one because I had received in the mail and had started reading anyway, Lev Grossman's The Bright Sword. So I am currently reading Lev Grossman's The Bright Sword and loving it. I never read The Magicians. I'm already on chapter 6. It already has tabs. It has made me laugh out loud so many times. It's amazing. This is a take on the Arthurian legend, and it happens after Arthur has been killed, and there's this new young knight, aspiring knight, who has no name, no money, no heritage, and he has fought his way through some terrible circumstances to get the training needed, the preliminary training needed to show up at the round table and ask to be admitted to that, the greatest of all. It's like being asked to be on the dream team, basketball dream team for Olympics, you know, like he's just showing up out of nowhere and saying, I qualify, let me in. And when he gets there, oh, all that's left are the misfits because everybody else has been killed in a recent attack or battle. We don't have, I'm not at a point yet where I know exactly what has happened, but I know they've all been killed. And now we've entered this point where we're getting the backstories on all of the misfit knights that are left. These are the ones that he is approaching to ask if he can be part of the round table. And what does the round table mean anymore? What does that kind of knighthood mean anymore if Arthur is gone? And what is his future? So this is so far really wonderful. I'm on chapter 6, page 70. I read all of that in one quick sitting. It's very readable. It is long since I'm doing this for the length. I'm getting 5 points for it. You have to read a book over 600 pages to get the 5 points. And this is 673 pages. So this will not take me long once I sit down to actually read it. So I'm currently reading this and loving it. I am ashamed to say I have not picked this up. I want to read it. I don't know why I'm not picking it up. Lost in the Garden, still in the exact same place I was last time I checked in. And The Sparrow. I am making progress in The Sparrow, and there are some things that are starting to stand out to me as quite interesting. Let's see. There are some interesting statements about faith that I have found compelling. For example, on his journey of discovery, he had not merely been the first human being to set foot on Rakat, had not simply explored parts of its largest continent and learned 2 of its languages and loved some of its people. He had also discovered the outermost limit of faith, and in doing so had located the exact boundary of despair. It was not that moment that he learned, it was at that moment that he learned truly to fear God. And then, did you think you were the only one? Is it possible that you are so arrogant? He asked in tones of wonderment. Sandoz was blinking rapidly now. Did you think you were the only one ever to wonder if what we do is worth the price we pay? Did you honestly believe that you alone of all those who have gone were the single man to lose God? Do you think you would have a name for sin, for the sin of despair, if only you had experienced it? Do you think you are the only one to have ever felt despair? Do you really think you're the only one to have ever lost faith? Why would we have language for it if you were the singular only one? There's a lot of mess to get to the nuggets of gold in this. It's not really my kind of writing style, but it's my kind of content. And so I am starting to enjoy this more, starting to feel the rhythm of it. I think I can probably, if I want to, get it read in like 1 or 2 more sittings. I think it is going to have a big payoff for me in the end as far as like how I feel about what I read, like what I take away from this book. But the process of reading it is not very enjoyable for me. But I'm in it, and I'm sure that will be the next one that I finish probably, unless I just totally let myself sit down and get immersed in the bright sword, which I very well might because it's so escapist. But not today, because today I have plans. And I will talk to you with another check-in soon. It is early in the morning on the 2nd of September, and I usually have these out a couple of days before the end of the month. I am going to insert some images here. I fell down. I was just walking, and I fell down, and I hurt my knee and my ankle so badly just by falling down. And I don't know what happened. Like, happily walking along and looking at the birds and just really like loving life, feeling so fortunate to be alive, and then boom, I was on the ground. Yeah, it is both lame and embarrassing, but also, wow, I hurt myself, and that kind of just made me not able to do anything. I took 1 day off of work, but like nobody understands how much pain I actually am in. Well, was in. I'm doing better now. It's been a few days. And so I didn't feel like I could call in again for like a fall. And so I went to work, and made it through 2 days, Thursday and Friday. I wear a Fitbit, and even with sitting as still as I possibly could, I was still walking like 4 miles on this not technically broken, but really, really busted up knee. I think my kneecap moved, and ankle. So I'm gonna count to 3, and then I'm gonna insert some images. If you don't want to see them, look away, because it's lots of bruising and grossness. So 1, 2, 3. There they are. My knee, my leg, my ankle. I'm bruised elsewhere as well. You can look back now. But it just kind of like wrecked several days for me. And for Lola too, the dog, because she's like, why aren't we walking? Why aren't we having fun? Why do you just want to come home and sit? Why can't I sit in your lap? Why do you scream when I jump on you? I am doing better. I had a 3-day weekend. This is the last day, the morning of my last day of that 3-day weekend. And I have been able to rest quite a bit, to rest the leg. Feeling particularly grateful that I think my kneecap has moved back into place. So gross. I've never broken a bone. I don't get hurt. I don't fall down. I have really great balance, really great balance. I have absolutely no idea what happened. So my friend says it's just getting old. I'm like, I know a lot of people who don't fall down. And she was like, there's a whole ad campaign around it. I've fallen and I can't get up, although I did get up. And I think that might have been my true problem, was that I fell, and then me being me, I was like, walk it off, get up, keep going. I was walking home like I always do. And I just walked home on this really messed up ankle and this really messed up knee. And it didn't hurt, but I think it was like the adrenaline and just like the necessity. And then when I got home and I sat down, it all fell apart. It all fell apart. So, maybe lesson learned, but knowing me, probably not. I mean, who else out there is like, who out there would be like, okay, I need to go to urgent care now? That was not me. And who out there would be like, I'll just call a friend and show him a picture. That was me. I think it's turning out okay. Check in with me in 10 years and see if my knee can tell the weather. But that is my excuse for cutting this like past the deadline. I do have a significant amount of books sitting next to me that I need to wrap up for the end of the year. I didn't quite complete the Sealey challenge. I would love to blame my knee, but really it was work. Like I always underestimate how exhausting, time-consuming, life-draining starting a new school year is. It really is. And there was just no room in it for anything but work and sleep and the dog. My apartment is a disaster because I haven't been able to clean it, because this would have been the time when I would clean it, but I've been just staying on the couch, resting the knee and the ankle. My lesson plans are a disaster. My grade book is a disaster because we've changed like operating systems, not like Microsoft or Apple, but like in education, there are different programs that schools use, and we've just changed to a brand new one. So we're all learning how to use that, and it's a total mess. The dog has way too much energy going into a week of work because I haven't been able to walk it out of her or run it out of her. I'm just a mess. I think a lot of people think I have it together because I tend to come across as very like confident and calm. I've been told I come across as very happy and calm, and inside I'm just this wobbling little ball of flubber. Did you ever see that movie? Like that little wobbling ball of green goo. That's me on the inside. I have too many questions, not enough answers, and too much to do, and not the ability right now to do any of it. So feeling a little bit not great about the beginning of this school year. Still happy, still keeping my spirits up. But yeah, it's going to go one of two ways for me into this next reading month. I'm either going to read way more than I should, because it's what I can control, or I'm not going to read anything because I'm just spiraling inside this little wobbly ball of flubber on the inside. So what I can do right now is take you through this stack of books that I finished out the month of August on. I don't remember if I talked about this one already. So I reread The Piece of Wild Things by Wendell Berry, which is one of my all-time favorite collections of poetry. I love Wendell Berry's writing. Read his essays, read his fiction, read his poetry. So good. I don't know if I've already read one of these to you or not, but I'm going to read you The Farmer and the Sea. The Farmer and the Sea. So you may get 2 Wendell Berry wrap-ups. I don't know. So The Farmer and the Sea. The sea, always arriving, hissing in pebbles, is breaking its edge where the landsman squats on his rock. The dark of the earth is familiar to him, close mystery of his source and end, always flowering in the light and always fading. But the dark of the sea is perfect and strange, the absence of any place, immensity on the loose. Still, he sees it as another keeper of the land, caretaker, shaking the earth, breaking it, clicking the pieces, but somewhere holding deep fields yet to rise, shedding its richness on them, silently as snow, keeper and maker of places wholly dark, and in him something dark applauds. I love Wendell Berry. I love Wendell Berry's writing, all his kinds of writing. So good. So good. I keep getting text messages, so I keep scrolling them off. Okay. Billy Collins, Sailing Alone Around the Room. This is one of my favorite Billy Collins collections. I own many of them. My favorite poem by Billy Collins is called Litany, and it is not in this one. But I'm going to read you some days from this collection. This is Sailing Alone Around the Room. Billy Collins is a wonderful poet who has a very particular sense of humor that emails and texts like crazy. It's all about book group. Has a very particular sense of humor, and it comes out in a very kind of dry, sarcastic way in the majority of his poems, but not all of his poems. So this is Some Days by Billy Collins. Some days I put the people in their places at the table, bend their legs at the knees, if they come with that feature, and fix them into the tiny wooden chairs. All afternoon they face one another, the man in the brown suit, the woman in the blue dress, perfectly motionless, perfectly behaved. But other days I am the one who is lifted up by the ribs, then lowered into the dining room of a dollhouse to sit with the others at the long table. Very funny, but how would you like it if you never knew from one day to the next if you were going to spend it striding around like a vivid god, your shoulders in the clouds, or sitting down there amidst the wallpaper, staring straight ahead with your little plastic face? It gives me chills. I love it. I read then Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur, and I'm gonna read you one poem from Milk and Honey. I think that I must admit to myself that Rupi Kaur and I don't really meld very, very well. I enjoy some of her poetry, but I struggle to call it poetry. I've talked about this in this video already when I talked about her first collection that I read this month. And I remembered, though, really liking this one when I first read it. And on the second read, I didn't like it all that much. So I'm going to read you one poem, though. And it is from page 65. It doesn't have a title. It says, "How do you turn a forest fire like me? So soft, I turn into running water." I really, really related to that. I'm going to read it one more time. How do you turn a forest fire like me so soft I turn into running water? And then I finished a book. I finished Mary Doria Russell's The Sparrow. I read this because I got the card for DeckofTBRathon that asked me to read a book that was recommended by someone, and I picked a recommendation by a friend, so it only got me 2 points, but that's okay. This was not a win for me, and it was a win for me. It really made me think very, very deeply about issues of colonization, religion, and faith. It made me think about experiences that I've taken part in the past and how my whole worldview has changed on so many things. It's really interesting how we live so many lives within one life. Like, I feel like a completely different person, and yet I am fundamentally the same person, but I would make such different decisions now than I did 20, 25 years ago. And this book is very much about the impact of the decisions that you make in the name of whatever you make them. So like if you make them in the name of God or the name of science or whatever, the name of exploration, the name of self-preservation. So it's kind of really pushing you to think about the impact that all of your decisions have, not just on you and your inner circle, but on time and the world, and in this case, the galaxy. And it was a very, very thought-provoking, and I think that Mary Doria Russell has just an immense intellect and mind and heart. But the writing for me was not it. The writing was not it. And I think that that's partly a product of its time. I think that it is a little bit pompous, a little bit elevated, very boring, in my opinion. It was really hard to hold my attention. But the content of the book was so engaging and enthralling for me in particular. These are things I like to think about all the time. And so I was oddly drawn to this book and oddly repulsed by it. And I did finish it, and I'm glad I read it, but I will never read it again, I don't think. I will keep it though, because there are some quotes that are quite pressing, like they press on my mind. I think I've already read them to you, so I'm not going to read them again. Most of them are near the front of the book. There are others near the end. Obviously, this book is building. It's a building book, so like it gets more and more intense the deeper you get into it. But yeah, the writing, the pacing, it wasn't for me. It was. I wanted the same content in a different package. Same content, different package. I read Jen Campbell's Please Do Not Touch This Exhibit. This was a first time read for me. And it is very much about living with differences and kind of feeling like you're on display as people and doctors and strangers just kind of poke and prod at you and try to figure you out. And also just how your body doesn't necessarily do what other people's bodies do, and how that makes you feel both special and different. And how you actually, yes, you're different, but you're not different. You are not on display. You are not an exhibit. I'm going to refrain from reading any from this, but if you want a collection of poetry about otherness, I highly suggest you pick this up. It is very well written. Jen Campbell is an amazing writer. A Light in the Attic I reread. This was it came at just the right moment. I needed a laugh. I'm going to refrain from reading anything from A Light in the Attic. I reread another one of my absolute favorite collections of poetry ever. I've never read anything else by this poet. I probably should, but I just love the subject matter of this particular collection. This is No Map Could Show Them, and I'm going to refrain from reading any poetry from this one as well, but this is such a great collection. Pick it up. And then I finished another book. I finished The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a literary fiction mystery thriller, more mystery than thriller, I would say, very literary fiction. And I just felt like I was very engaged at the beginning and I was very engaged at the end, and the middle, I wanted to skip. I started this and I was so bored by it. Sorry, there's somebody outside. I started this and I was so bored. She's just gonna keep growing. He's all gone, baby. Just a neighbor sorting his recycling. Okay, so The God of the Woods. This is very literary fiction. The middle, I just really wanted it to pick up the pace. I was so bored. There's so much like unveiling of backstory of multiple characters, and it is important information, but really it was like a meeting that could have been a phone call. It was like a meeting that could have been an email. The middle of this book, and it is a very chunky book, should have been like so much shorter, so much more concise, so much pacier. This was the slowest read of my month. I needed to know how it ended. And it is written in such a way that I couldn't skip ahead. I had to read every boring bit of it, but it was so dull to me. And then the last third of the book, I would say the first maybe 50, 60 pages was really, really had me. And then the last like third of the book was excellent. But everything in between I could have done without, except I couldn't do without it in order to understand the end. And that really annoyed me. It really annoyed me. Not that I want to skip the middle of mysteries. I don't. I want to be engaged in it. I want to be pulled into it. I want to be curious. I want to know everything. And I didn't. I just really didn't. So that was not a win for me. I probably won't read anything else by Liz Moore, but maybe I'll give another thing a chance. I don't know. I know, I think it's Long Bright River everybody loves. I didn't read it. It didn't really sound appealing to me. God of the Woods did sound very appealing to me, and it was such a hard read for me. No, it wasn't a difficult read. It was hard for me to care for the amount of time she was requiring me to care. I just did not want to do it. I just didn't want to do it. So then this one, which took me pretty much a month to read, Lost in the Garden. This is such a weird book. It's so weird. It is so weird and atmospheric and creepy. I would say it is not scary, but it definitely weirded me out. Like, it made me feel uncomfortable. So I kept putting it down, walking away from it, and then picking it up and trying to like continue on. And I did get to the end, and I'm really glad I read it. I would definitely read this book again, knowing more about it, knowing more of what it's doing and where it's going. I would like to go back and read it again and see what little clues and things I did not catch on the first read, because A, I was reading it so slowly, and B, I didn't know what was going on. So it starts in the summer with buying ice cream from a truck. And then it skips very quickly to a near future in an England that is much like England today, except that there are ghosts, which are kind of like zombies, and they're roaming the earth, and they are seeking to destroy humans. There are also humans, and it's been this way, and you just kind of have learned to live with it and to protect yourself. And then there's these key groups of kids, of like teens, maybe young adults, like early 20s, late teens. There's like a core group of them that we're kind of following, and they test the limits. They like taunt and hunt, and no, they don't hunt. They taunt and draw to them these ghosts, and then try and see if they can like survive and escape. So they'll like go out into the woods and play hide and seek and stuff, and they're slowly dying off. And then one day, this one guy decides he's gonna go to this place, Allenby, that everybody knows, just knows. It's just folklore. You're not supposed to go to Allenby, which is a place, a house. He goes and he doesn't come back. And then his girlfriend, I think she's his girlfriend, his friend with benefits, or whatever she is, his friend, there's her and another one of these 6 key kids left, and she decides that she's, well, the friend who's been running the movie theater that nobody goes to because of the ghosts decides she's going to go to Allenby, and like they feel called to it, I guess. And this girlfriend of the guy who had gone to save it or whatever, from what, we don't know. Like, I'm telling you, it's such a weird, like, fever dream kind of book. You read it and you feel like you're in a dream. You have no idea what's going on, but everything feels significant. And then you find out that some things are actually completely pointless. So it's such a weird book to read. It's an event. But she decides she's going to go because her guy is gone and he never came back. She knew he wouldn't come back because nobody comes back from Allenby, but he said he'd come back. And she's going to go and try and find him. And things, that's the normal part of the book. That's the normal part. Yeah, so this was super fun. Totally weird. Much more excited to reread it now that I've read it once. Definitely will reread it in a few years, not right away, I don't think, because I think that now that I know the end from the beginning, the story will be so much more interesting to me. So much more interesting because I will understand what's happening for the most part. And I will also know where to focus my energy, because there are things, like I said, that just turn out to be nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. Like, why is this here? And yet that in and of itself is part of, like, your preoccupation, your brain's preoccupation with all of these other little things that turn out to be nothing, but you don't know they're nothing. Like, that's part of what creates this really intense discomfort while reading this book. It's brilliant. It's brilliant and weird and uncomfortable. So, Lost in the Garden. I reread K. Tempest's Divisible by Itself in One. Absolutely love this collection. Love K. Tempest. Reread so much K. Tempest this month. It was a joy to my heart, a balm to my soul. Not going to read a poem from this, just for time's sake. And finally, I spilt a little coffee on it. I read this chunker. I read, I didn't tab very much, but I tabbed at the beginning and I tabbed at the end, mostly because I was just consuming it so quickly, especially on that day that I stayed home where my knee and my ankle were so messed up, I couldn't even really move. And this, I spent like, 5 hours just reading this book. Lev Grossman's The Bright Sword. This is Lev Grossman's take on Arthurian legend. It is a little bit irreverent. It is a lot funny. It is a lot fast-paced and like there's action scenes and just everything you think you would get from an Arthurian legend. And there's romance. There's so much character development in this. The basic premise is you have, what's his name? Colum. You have this kid, Colum. He is a nobody. He has no family name to back him. I think I've said this already in a previous clip in this video, but he's got like no family name to back him. And he shows up through a series of events. He is trained in knighthood. He thinks he's the bee's knees. And he shows up at Arthur's court in order to become a knight of the Round Table. He wants to shoot his shot. He wants to take this chance. He wants to present himself. He wants to show what he's capable of. He thinks that he is the right quality for this job and that he will be instated as one of the Knights of the Round Table. This is his goal. His entire life has been leading to this moment. On his way there, he has to kill somebody. It starts with a one-on-one battle and he has his first kill. And he's really upset by that because he feels like the knight wanted to be killed and like it was too easy. This battle slows him down, so he has to stay at an inn and he's kind of uncomfortable at the inn and he meets a fae. He doesn't know that she's a fae, but it's a really great beginning. It's a really great opening. It draws you in and it sets the tone and it feels very Arthurian, but also kind of modern. It's a lovely, lovely balance that Lev has created. Like, he really brings, there are people walking outside, if you can hear Lola. There's a way that he brings like a freshness to this story that brings it to life. Like, the Arthurian legends keep getting retold and retold and retold for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so often it feels not cookie cutter, but like two-dimensional. And this is alive. This is living, active, and alive. He shows up, he gets to Arthur's court, only to find that the last battle has happened. Like, if you are familiar with Arthurian legend, this is the battle that you know. And Arthur is dead, and most of his great knights are dead as well. There is a band of kind of the misfits that have survived. So there are still Knights of the Round Table, but they don't have a king, they don't have a leader. They have Guinevere, and she doesn't know what Arthur's plans were for the next person's ascension to the throne. And so they are going out to seek individuals that are still alive, for example, Lancelot, to find out who should take that stand, who should take the role of king. They also have to like go to Avalon, they have to talk with the Fae, they have this, you don't know who to trust, you don't know who's good and who's bad, you don't know what people's motivations are. The character development in this is phenomenal. There's a real like oral storytelling feel to this, and the whole ride through you've got Colum, who is trying to establish himself as a knight. Also, he's just like you. He's just like you. He doesn't know who to trust. He doesn't know what's real and what's not. He doesn't know all of the backstory, because some of the backstory will be familiar to you if you are familiar with Arthurian legend, but if you are not, there are many things you will not understand or know or can't see coming. And then if you are familiar, there are many things that are subtly, slightly changed or altered, not to the point where they aren't true to the true story or the real story or the original story or the original sets of stories, but in just enough that you are still surprised. You are still surprised. It's funny and emotional and fast-paced, and you're rooting for Colum this whole time, and you're rewarded. Even if you don't know much about Arthurian legend, like, you know some. It's just part of like our world, right? And so you are rewarded for the knowledge that you do know. You're like, oh yeah, I know that part. And then he takes it and just slightly twists it so that you don't know what you know anymore. Beautiful book, wonderful book, wonderful. And I am just this was my favorite read of the month. My only favorite read of the month. Although I enjoyed my reading experience this month, I didn't hit a lot of books that I really, really like feel are heart books. Like, they didn't speak to me, but I really enjoyed this. So I'm not going to tell you who this character is. I'm not going to give you any context, but I am going to read the last paragraph of the book. And I know that's a little bit controversial, but I really just think it's so beautiful. And I think it speaks a lot to just like life's experience for all of us. And so I just want to read the last chapter of, not the last, no, the last paragraph of the book. I won't say the character's name. It says, so-and-so rode until finally he came to a land where the names Arthur and Camelot had no meaning at all, and produced only puzzled looks. And there he rested from his travels. He didn't know it, but by then he was the very last knight of the Round Table still alive. All the others were gone. And when at last his time came too, he lay down on a hot, dry hill in the shade of an ancient, silvery-leafed olive tree, alone except for his horse and a single tiny perching bird that almost seemed to glow from within, as if it had swallowed a star, though it could just as easily have been a trick of the light. He looked up at the empty clouds, and as he died, he wondered, not for the first time, but for the very last, why it should be that we are made for a bright world, but live in a dark one. So beautiful. Oh, here's another quote. I'm going to read another one. I was about to say one more, but then I realized I'll probably read more than one more. So here's another quote. It says, he knew it for certain. It was coming, and then it would have happened. Time was always stealing away bits of your future and replacing them with memories. And then the memories faded, like trading real gold for fairy gold. And who thought that was a fair trade? But God must, or he wouldn't have made time that way. She was one of those vibrant people who seemed to be part of a more interesting story than he was. And when she left, she took it with her and left him behind in the dreary margins. It was a long way from Mull to Camelot. Adventures were quick and exciting when you heard about them, but when you were inside one, they happened very, very slowly. And isn't that the truth? Yeah, this was a big win. Highly recommend. I had not read The Magicians, which is, I guess, Lev Grossman's biggest or most well-known series. I probably will read that now, or maybe watch the TV show. I hear they're very different from each other. This was my first Lev Grossman. I picked it up because it was Arthurian, and it has ignited in me an interest. There's nothing out there. It has ignited in me an interest. It could have been a squirrel or a bunny or something. But it has ignited in me an interest in reading more Arthurian legend, and so I picked up Mary Stuart's first book in her Arthurian quartet, I believe. Maybe there's 5 books. What would that be called? Quintet? Yeah, probably. Anyway, I am going to wrap up this reading vlog. We're in September. I was going to say we're headed into, but we are in September. I've already finished a book. Yesterday, I finished the book Bear. So that will be the first thing that you hear about in my September reading wrap up. I am reading so many books at once right now, mostly because I've been sitting so still for several days because of, as I have said repeatedly, the knee and the ankle, but they're so good. I've started the new Chuck Wendick, Black Apple Orchard. That man can write. I'm so into it. I am so into it, and it is so creepy in such a good way. I wish that it was a movie. I really, really do. It made me want to watch a bunch of scary movies, and so I did. I watched The Watchers, which is creepy. It has a couple of jump scares, but it's not like hauntingly creepy or anything. I did figure out a very key element very early on in the movie, and so I was just waiting to see it unfold. And that's okay. I often do figure things out in movies a little bit too quickly, but I figured it out, and I was watching it unfold, and it kept my interest, and it was a little bit creepy. And then I watched Tarot. It's on Netflix. And that was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. Lots of jump scares, though. Terrible acting, terrible writing. Had the potential, I think, to be a kind of classic, like Ouija. Do you remember that movie? That was really well done. And it had the potential to be that kind of movie, but then they just made it like... You watch it and it feels like you're watching Scream, except that it's taking itself seriously. It's not being ironic. And yet it was like an 8th grade project with good equipment. So not a win, but it was fun to watch. And my reading of the Philippa Gregory of the Whiteacre, the second book of the Whiteacre series, just made me want more Philippa Gregory. I'm reading the last book, even though it wasn't on my TBR. I'm currently reading Meriden, and I'm enjoying it quite a lot. It feels different from the other 2 books, but I'm just waiting to get more information about our main character and figure out how she fits in this long lineage. But in the meantime, I'm also rewatching White Queen, White Princess, Spanish Princess, Spanish Queen, Spanish Princess, and just totally immersed in old English history, Philippa Gregory style. So I am keeping my mind busy while I sit very still. It's hard for me to sit very still. I like to sit still, but not for so many days in a row. I like it when I choose it. I don't like it when I have to. But as I say that, I do think I need to elevate my knee. I've been sitting at this table for a while now, and I want it to be as healed and well as I can get it before I go back to work tomorrow, because there are no days off in the month of September after this one, or I think in the month of October for that matter. So it's going to be a long haul. It's going to be a long, long haul, and we're going to do it. Not loving this school year. Not loving this school year. I was really excited going into it. I really was. Really hopeful. Things are happening that I'm just really not into. So I'm back in that place where I'm like when I'm not reading and I'm not watching scary movies, while I have to sit still and I'm not looking at the kitchen going, dang, I wish I could stand up long enough to do the dishes without messing up my leg. I am thinking about ways to leave my job. Will I ever do it? I don't know. And when I say leave my job, I mean my career, like change things completely. I've been a teacher for 26 years. This is my 26th year. I love the teaching part of teaching, and I hate the rest of it. And when I say hate, I don't use that word lightly. I hate the rest of it. So, I don't know. Have any ideas for other careers? Let me know. I just don't know what I don't know, you know? And you can quote me on that. I just don't know what I don't know, you know? Yeah, I'm gonna go take care of this little ball of flubber that's inside me. And not put any of these books away. They're just gonna sit on my table until I am healed, or healed enough. And I'm gonna go elevate my leg, and I'm gonna go read some more of Chuck Wendig's Black Apple Orchard. It's so good. You're going to hear a lot about it in my September wrap-up. Oh, and if you are a Victober person, if you like Victorian October, Victorian Literature October, otherwise known in the book community as Victober, the prompts went out over the weekend. They came out already. I love that they post them early, and I'm already making plans for Victober, and that is super fun. Super, super fun. October is my favorite. I've been doing these month-long reading vlogs for October for a few years before I decided to do them every month. And it's my favorite month of the year to do these reading vlogs because I get to talk about Victorian literature and not feel guilty about it. Like, not that I feel guilty, but like I feel like most people who watch me don't just want to hear me talk about Jane Eyre all the time. Even though I would love to talk about Jane Eyre all the time. But I'm super excited. I am pulling together books to meet those prompts and trying to rein myself in and actually just pick an amount of books that I might actually be able to read. But right now I have 20 hopefuls. Which 20 is way too many Victorian novels to read in October. And that makes me sad. Okay, in the meantime, you and me, you know what I'm gonna say. Let's go read.